Hello and welcome to another episode of eBay Scavengers at ebayscavengers.com. This is episode number 29. And I'm Ryan and I'm here with Wendy. Hi, Wendy.
Hey, Ryan.
And we are talking about what's going on in our stores, plural, this week.
Well, my store has been, as you know, like on super clog because Mikey and I were traveling. And we had all these great plans about getting out, on the road and using my eBay address, my eBay account, to open a second store and buy stuff at yard sales, sell it on the road, and then whatever we didn't sell, we were going to ship home. And, in theory, it's kind of a cool idea, but it didn't work out the way we planned. So, for one, the yard sale scene wasn't that great. And the other thing was we had less free time than we thought we would.
Yeah.
So we didn't do it. We didn't open the second store, but we did buy a bunch of stuff and we shipped it home. And we're just now kind of getting into it.
So how much stuff did you guys ship home? I'm curious. How many boxes did you guys ship home?
So we shipped home, and it's funny because I was like, I wonder what Ryan and Jay would be shipping home if they were on the road. And you were in the same area, in fact. So we were both in Washington, Oregon. We shipped home about 4 or 5 boxes that were 22 by 14 by 10.
Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
When you were up there, did you ship home around the same?
Yeah, we were there for 13 days, and several days of it we were doing our other job, kind of like you were saying, we weren't just doing eBay stuff. But yeah, we shipped home, I would say 3 similar sized boxes of stuff, and it's just sometimes it feels so ridiculous because you're like, why am I shipping this home? This seems so crazy, but you just can't help it in a way because you find great stuff sometimes and you just are like, I gotta get it home. I gotta sell it.
That was my next question to you. I got up there and maybe like you, I was like, oh my God, Goodwill is so different here. These are warehouse-sized buildings. They are crowded. They're filled with trendy people, but also all socioeconomic groups. And I couldn't believe it. And what I noticed was, the vintage stuff was real hard to find, and mostly it was the Gap and real common modern stuff.
Yes, I found that to be true as well. I think that a lot of times at Goodwills now, it's just really, especially Goodwill and Salvation Army, I mean, you just cannot find vintage stuff. It's just not there. It's so rare. But those warehouses, did you go to the outlets, the Goodwill outlets?
We didn't actually get to the ones that sell by the pound. So no, that's probably what defines the outlet. We didn't. Did you?
Yeah, we went to one in Salem, Oregon. I mean, that was kind of out of the way. We just stumbled upon it. And I actually found some really cool stuff, but it was, not vintage. Mostly it was just good, quality, overalls and duvet covers and things like that, where I'm like, ooh, this is expensive stuff. It's not vintage, but.
It's interesting too, because we stayed with a friend who lived in Seattle one night, and he was showing me all the vintage stuff in his house, and it was super cool. And he had a Pendleton blanket that was really gorgeous. And I was like, wow, where are you getting this? And he said, oh, I'm getting it at the Goodwill. And then he took us over. And I couldn't find a thing. But he said he goes every day. And that really, I think, made all the difference.
Yeah, I think people who are locals, I mean, they're like my local thrift store or your local thrift store, or your local yard sales. I mean, someone might not find one thing, but then they're like, oh, I go every day. I go to the yard sales every weekend, four days a week. So
yeah. One thing that I was psyched about and surprised about is that my little rinky-dink town of 7,000 people had better thrift shopping, better yard selling than a city of several million. I couldn't believe it.
Yep. I will definitely echo that point because we live in a place where a very, very small county that's a little more spread out. But just in urban areas, I mean, there's so many people that are scavenging and shopping that, places get shopped. Like, that's what we say when we go to a place where, like, this place has been shopped because there's nothing, not a single thing,
Yeah, I felt it. So, P.S. So we didn't open a second store, but we got home and we turned off vacation mode. So we reopened our existing store. And it was so wild and fun because within like 24 hours, we heard, we have this setting on our phones. So when someone buys something, our iPhones go cha-ching. So within 24 hours, it was like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And it was like so exciting. Yeah. And we were just like back in business in 5 seconds.
That's great. That's really good to hear because sometimes it can be slow after vacation mode. You're like, come on, people, pick it up,
And, admittedly, the pace that we're selling at right now, I would call a summer pace, which to me, at least, it seems that people are busy having fun on the weekends. They're running out and getting outdoors. And I see sales just in general being slower in the summertime.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too in my list of things going on. Like it was just July 4th, super long weekend, like started Wednesday night. People are still on vacation today. I'm like, what? And it just seems slow as hell. And the other thing too that I've noticed, because randomly enough, we've been doing like auctions, like one auction a week. People are slow to pay. It's not even so much like slow to buy. It's like if people make an offer or win an auction, it's like they're taking forever to pay, which is kind of the worst because there's the anticipation of like, we made a sale. And then you just sit there forever and you're like, will they pay for it? I don't know.
I think what drives me crazy about slow payment is I lose them and I'm afraid I'm going to forget to ship because they fall out of my queue in terms of some things that occurred so they can pay and I don't really have a way to notice,
Right. Yeah, I actually, just a quick mention, I have the PayPal app set up on my iPhone so that when someone pays, it sends me an alert, which is very helpful because then I'm like, oh, that random person from last week paid. That's really good to know. So you can set that up on your phone.
So I have it too. And the only reason I don't pay attention to it like you do is we also have another online business. And I just figure it's that business. Right. So when eBay sales occur, I expect eBay to tell me through my iPhone again. And that's kind of why why I could make that mistake. But that has to do with my own poor planning of my technology.
Yeah, too much technology overlap.
So I'll whip you through quickly what I came home to, right? So with sales. So one of the funnier things that always comes up for me is I'm shocked when people who live outside of the United States buy something totally mundane that's available anywhere from the United States.
Yes.
So as soon as I got home, I sold like an inductor fan. And it's like something that they could go to a Home Depot or anything like it and buy themselves. So I cannot get over it. Another funny thing we sold, which I love, was a garlic press, like a very simple household object. But for us, it shows the way we live. So we're kind of kitchen widget people. We love widgets and we want like the best, coolest thing. And we get excited about it. So when a great garlic press appeared on the market, we bought it and then we had to dump the one we had. And that's a big part of the way we use eBay. It lets us be consumers and then also offload what we had before without it going to the trash. So we sold a garlic press. And then I guess the only other comment I have about this week is I sold like clothes. And I mean clothes that I can remember buying with my mother in Macy's over 20 years ago.
Yeah, like a retro.
It's crazy. And, albeit this was like a decent item that I never wore and it was a brand name, but I bought it over 20 years ago. And I just got like top retail for it. So that was just crazy.
Yep.
But speaking of clothes, I've been watching your green and blue Nike sneakers.
Yes. Now, I have a story behind that. We found this pair of 1970s original Nikes. Like that's when Nike started, was in the late 70s. So I
Uh-huh.
found these at our local thrift store, and I didn't think, too much about it. We threw them in our little bag because it's always a bag sale there. And I got home and I was like, oh my God, these are original Nikes. Like, these are worth money. So we were like, okay, let's do an auction. Fast forward a week, the auction ends. They sell for over $200. But this is the worst part about auctions. The person did not pay. It was a person who bid everyone else up. They have zero feedback. They're like not a real person. Yeah. So you're like, great. So I have to wait like 2 or 3 days to do an unpaid item, like this person hasn't paid. Then I have to wait 4 more days to relist the item. So 2 weeks go by and I'm relisting it as fixed price. So the auction, at first the auction seems really exciting. You're like, whoa, it's getting bid up. It's going so high. And then they never pay.
You're going to do a fixed price that shows that you know the high ceiling price for this item?
Yeah, I listed it at the price that it went for on auction. Now, I don't know if it'll sell for that. I didn't put make me an offer, but I know that if people are really into the shoes, they will just email me through messages and say, will you take a lower offer? And I'll put make me an offer on it. But I think I've seen other shoes that are similar go for $300, $400, and I put mine up for $230.
Wow.
So that's the pros and cons of auctions, in my opinion. The pros are, sometimes you sell it for a lot and the person does pay, or sometimes it gets high enough that it gives you a better chance of realizing the price of it.
Yeah, it kind of tells you.
Yeah. At least I got close to, getting an idea of how much they're worth. So I put them up for $230, and hopefully some sneakerhead somewhere will snatch them up.
So another thing that really impressed me when I watched your store this week was the old rug. And not that I'm shocked that you can sell an old rug, but I'm shocked because I so often turn away from the rugs that have the kind of poor condition that your rug had.
Right.
And yet you still got a pretty good dollar for it. Yeah,
so these, I sold a rug last year. It was just a small, 3x5 Persian, authentic Persian wool rug with a lot of damage. It had a lot of damage. And the guy paid $86 for it within 5 minutes of me posting it. So I found 2 more of those rugs while we were traveling recently up in Boston, and I bought them for almost nothing. I mean, like a couple bucks. So I knew they'd sell for at least $80. I don't know why. I don't know who buys them with that much damage, but people like them. So this one rug went up to $75. But the lady hasn't contacted me, and she hasn't paid yet. So I'm just like, fixed price, $80,
it's probably a whole nother podcast to start to break down some of these categories because, I know just a little bit about rugs, but I know there's all these ways to determine value, from the tightness of the knit to sometimes there's a name written in Arabic on one end that indicates certain things. There's all these tells. Right. Ways to look at the way that the dye is fading to know if it's vegetable or something else. But anyway, it's a study unto itself.
Well, that's the reason for doing an auction for an item like that, essentially. Sure. Because someone else is the expert, not me. That's my reasoning for doing certain things on auction, is someone else knows more about this. Other people, like I was saying, sneakerheads. That's actually what they call themselves. They're these sneaker, people who collect sneakers. So they know more about, the different colors that are rare and whatever,
Right.
So,
right.
It's hard for me to tell.
Auction's a great way to just be I'm not going to stop and do a master's degree in rugs right now. Let's let the world just tell me what it's worth. Yeah.
Exactly. And hopefully they'll pay for it.
So this week I had something else happen that's happened to me about a half a dozen times before, which is I found an item that I sold a while back, and when it sold, I couldn't find it to ship it. So I had to give the customer back their money. And then I found it like just the other day. And that happens to me occasionally.
So when you found it, did you write to that person and say, hey, I found this?
You know, if it was a high-end item, I would have, but it was like a $10 item. And I was like, who cares?
It's funny you said that because that happened to us this week. It happens so rarely, but there was this one little microphone. It was this little like cardioid microphone. It was $18. We could not find it anywhere. I don't know where it went. And
well, so mine is a shoe brush, right? And it wasn't where I would put brushes, but when I found it, this is like 2 months later, today, I found it in my shoe box.
Well, that's the problem. That's a whole other episode is storage. How do you categorize something? You're like, this thing's electronic, but it can plug into a computer. But it's also for music. And you're like, oh, where do I put this thing? You know?
We have some shelves in our storage. Like, some things you don't have a lot of. So we actually have a box that's called music and religious objects.
Yes. We have 3 boxes labeled miscellaneous, which is a nightmare.
Nice. I was particularly impressed also with your My Little Pony box.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally sold that. It's like a little My Little Pony. I got it for $3 at a flea market. I sold it for $25. I wanted to sell it for more, but I was like, I'll just get this thing out. But it holds like 12 My Little Ponies. It's from 1985. Someone wanted it.
I see that. Nice job.
Thanks. So is there anything else happening that you want to... Oh, one thing I wanted to mention is we are getting a lot of comments on the blog. And I actually didn't realize that because I have blog comments filtered on my email. And Jay's like, we're getting all these comments. And I'm like, we are?
Wow.
Yeah, so we've been getting a lot of downloads and a lot of comments on the blog. So people are just having conversations about eBay. It's really fun.
Well, thanks, everybody who's reading and commenting. I have to share with you that I have an old friend who I was, advising, like, hey, you really want to check this out. This is for real. He's going through some life transitions. And I gave him the podcast URL, and I said, well, just check it out. So anyway, this was a couple months back. He checked it out. He sends me his eBay store. He's on his 3rd month. He cleared $6,000 last month, and he is rocking it. And he said it. He learned everything from this podcast.
That is amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing to me when people have the motivation to actually do it. It's one thing to be like, oh, that's neat. But when they're like, I am doing this for real, you're like, whoa.
What's crazy is he lives in New Orleans, and he's not like someone who moved there. He's native. And native New Orleans people, I'm sure they take it for granted, but they have a special sight. They have an awareness about neighborhoods, about objects, about history. And I'm like, you got to use that. And that's exactly what he did. And he was like, you're right. I can see stuff, and I didn't realize it. So that's the strength now of the store.
I think also a lot of people, just on a side note, who have that kind of like vision of like seeing something, knowing it's precious to someone in the world and that it's unique and interesting. I think that's a real skill. And I think a lot of people who have that skill don't realize that it's a special skill.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people who run shops, like your mom. It's that same skill. And yeah, when you have it, it's easy to take for granted.
Yeah, because my sister's the same way. She's amazing. Like, you see her apartment and you're like, oh my God. Like, they have all this amazing, like, vintage antiques, like all this artwork and beautiful furniture. And I'm just like, why are you not selling on eBay? Like, you have this amazing eye. Like, so many people don't have this eye, for beautiful objects,
Yep. Well, you never know. If she needs money enough, one day she might change her to her mind.
Yep. Exactly. And she knows who to turn to get advice.
I know, right? Her whole family.
Right. All right. So let's wrap this episode up. Thanks for all the comments, and we will start the next episode.